What's up, guys? Welcome back. I just wanted to do a quick video about a knife that I have from a trade that's not going to stick around in my collection just because I'm not a flipper guy, but I want to do first impressions because I haven't seen a lot of videos about these. This is the Les George ESV. So these have been around for a while, and he did a couple variants of them. One with a thumb stud and one with a flipper. I've said before, I'm not a flipper guy, so the thumb stud variant actually might be a keeper for me, but this one won't be. But it's a cool little knife, so I wanted to do quick first impressions on it. First of all, just quick, get these out of the way. It is an S45 VN. It is flipper only titanium handle construction with a DLC coating and some milling on it. It is a 4-ounce knife, which is actually pretty chunky considering the size. So we'll do some quick size comparisons too, and then I'll talk about some notable things. First, I'll take out the PM3 because that is kind of the most similar in size. And the Les George is definitely smaller than the PM3. You get a little more blade on the PM3 and a little more handle. Then I'll take out the PM2 for size comparison. Obviously, significantly smaller than the PM2. This Les George is definitely like a little tiny pocket rocket. So, well, what are some notable things in my first impressions of this knife? Like I said, this is not a keeper for me, so I haven't carried it. I haven't cut with it. But, you know, it's got some, I've had a lot of knives, so I can kind of glean some information from just, you know, handling it and playing with it a little bit. First of all, it's got a really nice grind on it. Les George is an all-American made company, if you didn't know. Minus some, you know, more affordable models that they do make overseas. But most notably, the VECP is really popular right now. I've handled one of those. It is a really big knife. Feels great, but just a little too big for me. This is, you know, similar quality construction. It feels super solid. The lockup is amazing, and it is, you know, just, you could use it as it feels like it's a solid piece of metal, not a folding knife, which is awesome. The hardware is massive on this. I think I didn't actually check. I should have checked beforehand. This is at least a T10. And these are probably T8s. At least a T10, it might even be a T15. Really huge pivot screw. And then the titanium feels really solid. The DLC coating's really solid. And then the pocket clip, it's just a simple stamped metal pocket clip. But, you know, I don't really mind that very much. I actually, sometimes they are more functional than a milled clip. And this one, I just slid it in my pocket for a minute to feel how the pocket clip retention is, how it feels in pocket, and it's great actually. It's just a nice simple stamped metal clip, like I said, that has a good ramp on it and feels good going in and out of the pocket. Like I said, I'm not carrying this because I got it in a trade, brand new in box or in pouch, and I just don't want to put any wear on it because I'm just going to sell it. It also has this great stone wash on it. Actually, I feel like Les George does some of the best stone washes out there. It's pretty, like, I guess, a broad stone wash. You'll see these really fine stone washes on other blades. This one you can kind of see the individual marks, but I like that. I like the way that looks, as opposed to something like, you know, what I've got in my pocket today, which is the Unmumzon, which is a much finer stone wash. This is kind of a, I guess, broader stone wash, if that makes sense. So let's talk about a couple of things that are notable that I don't love about this knife. Well, you know, I don't really like flipper knives, like I just mentioned. But I, you know, can't fault people for liking flipper knives. That being said, I think this flipper is proportionally really large for this knife. What that means is you actually get a really good leverage and an excellent action on this. It just flies out and you can really hear it click. And how hard it flies out. But I think that probably could have been accomplished with a smaller flipper tab that would be less intrusive. Because, you know, if you look at this, you're probably adding, you know, another quarter. So if this is 1 or 4/4, this would probably be equal to 1/4 of this. So probably if that makes sense. So this makes if this is 100% of the knife, this makes the knife almost 125% with this flipper tab. So it's a pretty large flipper tab, which feels a little bit unnecessary for the size of this knife. I mean, you could argue that it acts as a finger guard from slipping up on the knife, but feels a little bit excessive. That being said, even though the knife is small, the ergos are pretty solid. This front, the disengagement spot works really well for your finger, but you are kind of crammed on there. I kind of get a pinky hangover on on the end, but I can get 4, but I have pretty slim fingers. I've got size large or XL or extra large hands if you're counting gloves, but my fingers are pretty slim, so usually I can get a pretty good grip on pretty small knives, but this choil or this flipper tab kind of doesn't allow me to get a good 4-finger grip, maybe a okay 4-finger grip, if that makes sense. The other thing that I wanted to note that is the most notable bad thing of this knife, if you will, is actually the size of the detent ball. That sounds silly, but the detent ball on this is quite large, and the engagement of the blade with the detent after disengaging the lock bar is quite far. So if you look here, the knife is currently disengaged but riding on the lock bar and not the detent ball. So if past this, it will get onto the detent ball, but because of the size of the detent ball, the amount of effort actually to push the knife onto the detent ball is pretty high. I'm applying pressure, and it pops. And you can see how much kind of pressure that takes. If you watch the lock bar, you can actually see the size of the detent ball when I'm doing this too. You can see how much the lock bar has to move. What that means is actually, though this knife is on bearings and is super smooth coming out, is the disengagement is kind of a little bit awkward because it drops to your thumb and then it's stuck on the detent ball, and you kind of have to add some pressure. So what ends up happening is you have kind of a snap shut, which I feel like is a little bit sketchy feeling, honestly. It's hard to describe, but it feels like it should be smoother, and I think that could be accomplished with a slightly smaller detent ball. You can hold it, and you can't really hold the lock bar out of the way until it engages, unless you reach down like I just did here. But that could have been accomplished with having either a smaller flipper because the flipper wouldn't catch my nail, or having a smaller detent ball. So that's an interesting thing to note. To describe this better, I brought just an example knife out, which has a really good detent ball, and that's the Lamia. If you look, when you disengage the Lamia, it goes right onto the detent ball with very little effort. The detent is excellent on this knife, and the detent ramp is really good, as opposed to the Les George, which could use a good detent ramp. So, well, who is this knife for? This is, I think this knife actually fits a lot of good, or it fits a lot of requirements for someone. These small knives with the, let's see, I think this is, let's see what the actual blade length is. It's less than 3 inches for sure, or right on 3 inches. No, it's 2 3/4 blade length. 2 3/4 inch, yeah, 2 3/4 inch blade length. So it's a nice small knife, which is great. It's basically legal everywhere in the States. So those small knives are really popular right now because they are excellent EDC knives. This blade shape and the nice little like harpoon swedge is a good slicer, or would be a good slicer. It's indicative of good slicing. The drop point, or I guess this is probably a little bit more of a clip point, is excellent, and then the jimping adds some good security when slicing with it. I think this is a really good just EDC knife for someone that likes a flipper. I kind of instantly go to the Rosie when I think of knives this size, because that's kind of the gold standard for these smaller knives. Obviously this is a little bit smaller than the Rosie, but rides thicker. The Rosie's pretty thin. So if you're someone that likes flippers and kind of a small knife, I think this knife would be excellent for you, and you also appreciate American-made knives. Anyways, I just wanted to give some first impressions on this Les George ESV. It's a solid knife. Like I said, it's not going to stick in my collection because I'm not a flipper guy. But if you are, I think you would like this. It's got a great action, good flipper tab. The only thing to note is that kind of weirdly large detent ball like I mentioned. But other than that, I think the fit and finish is absolutely excellent. You get some really solid hardware, extremely good lockup, definitely fidget friendly. And I think it's just a good all-around small kind of pocket rocket of a knife. So hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know whether you're a flipper person or not in the comments, and hope you have a great day.